Hi, boys and girls. So this is letter X week. Now, letter X, we always do our Bible story for the letter of the alphabet. And letter X, there's hardly anything in the Bible that starts with X except for a king, and his name was Xerxes, which Xerxes sounds like it's a Z, but it's actually a funky X. So that's our Bible story this week. And Xerxes was in the Bible in the book of Esther. And we're going to talk about Queen Esther. So let's sing our song again to get there. And this is a really small Bible, so we'll see if we can get there. Genesis, Exodus. Yeah, I'll start over and say that right. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. So it's in between Nehemiah and Job. That's Esther. She's got her own book. Now, it starts off with there is a king, and his name is Xerxes. And boys and girls, he is the king of Persia. Let me take you back. Hit your rewind button. There's King Nebuchadnezzar. Remember we talked about the King Nebuchadnezzar and the fiery furnace? That's the king of Babylon. And they had all this stuff. This they call the pink is all what their kingdom was. Well, the king of Persia took over, defeated the king of Babylon. So Babylon's no more. Now it's Persia. And King Xerxes is the king. And look, his kingdom, look at all that pink. Huge kingdom, okay? So big, big kingdom. And he is having this great, big, huge party for all of the people who are in charge. Like all of his military leaders and all that, all their, for us, senators and that kind of thing, the presidents. So all the people in his kingdom that are in charge would all come together and have this great big feast. And we think that he probably at this time was starting to kind of plan a new invasion of Greece, which didn't go very well. But that's what we think is going on here. So he's there and he decides that he wants his queen to come out and parade around in front of all the men that are there. That sounds like a very wise idea, does it? So her name, he's got a queen, her name is Vashti. And King Xerxes wants to have her come out and do that. Well, Queen Vashti's like, no, that's not a really good idea. Well, he's king, and back then, the women didn't have, they really couldn't say no very well. They could do that today, but they couldn't back then. And so he got super mad at her because she wouldn't do it. Which she was actually being pretty wise. She was actually a good queen, believe it or not. But she wouldn't do it. And he was like, that's it. So he asked all the men around him and said, what should I do to her? And they said, get rid of her. So they made her leave into a very, she was exiled is what it's called. And she went out and she couldn't come back, which is really sad. Well, that advice was not great advice for him. And after a while, he was like, man, I kind of wish I had a queen. I don't have a queen anymore. So they decided they got this great idea, which really was not a good idea, but they decided, let's go get all the girls who aren't married. Let's get all of them and bring them to the palace, and we're going to parade them in front of the king and decide, he'll decide who he likes best. So that brings us to Esther. This is a little girl. Well, she's not a little girl. She's young, probably a teenager. And her name is Hadassah. Everybody say it together with me. Hadassah. And that is actually a Hebrew name. So she's living there with her uncle, and her uncle's name is Mordecai. And when they come around to get her, Mordecai works for the king. He works really close to the palace, the king. And he says, don't let anyone know that your name is Hadassah, because that's a Jewish name, and we don't want them to know who you are. So she decides to change her name to Esther. So they come around and they take her, which that doesn't sound like fun, does it? I would not want my daughter to get taken away from me, but that's what they did back then, and it was kind of sad. But thankfully, when she got there, her name was Esther. She wasn't a queen yet. Her name was Esther, and listen to this. She got 6 months of beauty treatments for her hair and making it all pretty, and then she got 6 more months of special cosmetics for her skin. And she had all these ladies that were her servants and took care of her. So that wasn't such a bad gig right there. So she gets there, and her name is Esther, and her uncle would kind of check in on her every once in a while because he worked right there, but no one told anyone else that they were related. So no one knew that she was Mordecai's niece. So just you keep that in mind. It's kind of important later on. And so here she is. Look at this. Oh, look how beautiful she is. She's so beautiful. After they all get done doing her hair and her makeup and everything. And it finally comes her turn to go meet the king. So it's been a whole year, and she hasn't even met the king yet. So she gets to go to the king, and she tells the guy who's in charge, she does exactly what he says. And she's very humble and sweet-spirited, and she goes in and she meets the king. He likes her the best. So where is she? Wait a minute, guys. I lost my picture. This happens at least once a week during Bible story, doesn't it, boys and girls? Oh, I know what's in here. Here it is. He makes her queen. So here she is with her beautiful crown on. And it's so good. Well, soon after, here's this dude. This dude, his name is Haman. Everybody say Haman. Well, Haman works for the king, and he's like the king's right-hand man. He is like, there's a king, and then Haman. Haman like knows everything, and only the king is above him. So he's a big dude, really, really important. And he's kind of not a good guy. There's a whole long story, and your parents maybe can research it and tell you more, but there's a whole long story about way back with Moses. With King Saul, long before King David, that King Saul didn't obey God, and the Jewish people hurt this guy's family way like a long time ago, and he hates all the Jews. So it's kind of a long story. We can go that, if you ask me a question, I can tell you later what that all is. But he doesn't like the Jewish people, and he knows that Mordecai is a Jew. And so he does not like him at all. And he's very kind of full of himself and proud and really not a very nice man. But he goes around and he makes everybody bow down to him. He's not even a king, but he makes them all bow down to him. Well, look at this picture, boys and girls. Mordecai will not bow to him. And he says, Mordecai, you should be bowing to me. And Mordecai says, I will only bow to my king and the Lord. What do you think that does to Haman? It makes him super mad. He gets really mad. And so he goes to the king and he tricks the king. Now, mind you, the king really likes Mordecai. Oh, wait, we got to back up. Rewind. Before this, Mordecai tells the king that he tells Esther. Forgot my story. There are these two guys and they are plotting to kill the king. And Mordecai hears about it, because he kind of overhears them talking, and he runs to Esther and tells Esther, and Esther tells the king, and these two guys, they get in trouble, and the king's life is saved. So remember that, it's a big deal. And there's a guy that always stands next to the king, like one of these guys here, that stands there, and he writes down all day long everything the king does. The king had breakfast. The king went to the bathroom. The king washed his face. Every little thing the king does, this guy writes down. So when Mordecai saved his life, he wrote that down. Keep that back here too, that's important. So Haman does not like Mordecai, doesn't like the Jews. So he goes to the king and he tricks the king into saying, there's a group of people that don't like you and they're rebelling against you, which is not true. They were not. They were very good people. And he's like, we got to get rid of them. Well, the king, of course, gets scared, thinking, hey, they want to kill me. Yes. And so he makes a new law that says anybody who is a Jew, they need to die. And on this one day, it's like, I don't know how many years, it was in the future, this one day, everybody could kill the Jews. And so he takes it, and his messengers take it throughout the whole kingdom. And all the Jewish people are going to die. Well, here you can see, the Jewish people are all like, they're freaking out. Mordecai is crying and so upset. And look, Queen Esther's upset. And Mordecai sends word to her and says, listen, if you think you're safe, you're not safe because you're a Jew too. And they're going to kill all of us unless you do something. Maybe, just maybe, God made you queen for such a time as this. So she thinks about it and she says, hold on. And she sends word back to Mordecai. Everybody pray and fast, which means don't eat anything. Do that, and I'm going to do the same thing. So her and all her ladies' maids that she had, they all don't eat all day long, and they pray. And they wait, and then she says, okay, I'm going to go to the king. And she goes to the king. This part's a little weird. Now, if she goes in front of the king, and the king does not hold his scepter out to her, guess what? She could be killed. So she's kind of scared to go in front of the king because you never know what the king's going to do. Who knows, maybe he doesn't want to be bothered that day. But she walks in, and thankfully he loves her so much, so he holds this thing out to her. And she walks in, and he says, Queen, what do you want? I love you so much. I'll give you anything you ask for, up to half my kingdom. Like, he's ready to give her anything, right? Well, you know what she asked for? King, would you just come have supper with me? Okay, sure. And I want Haman to come too. So Haman and the king, hold on here, they go and they have dinner with Esther. And just the two of them with Esther. And the king says, literally, what do you want? What can I give you? And she says, come again to dinner tomorrow night and I'll tell you. He says, okay, sounds good. So Haman comes out of there. Okay, he just had dinner with the queen and the king and just him. Boy, he's like, I am so awesome. Everyone loves me. And he goes up and everyone's bowing to him except for Mordecai. And he gets so mad. He goes home and he builds, they call it a gallows. This does not look good for Mordecai, does it? He's going to kill Mordecai. He is so mad. He's like, tomorrow at this time, I'm gonna kill him. This is it. This is not a good story, right? This is a really bad story. Well, that night, that night, the king can't sleep. Now, guys, this is gonna get good here in a minute. The king can't sleep. Remember the dude that wrote everything down? The king can't sleep, so he calls him in. He says, come here, come read to me. Read to me about the records of the day, and that'll be boring enough to me that I'll go to sleep. So this guy starts reading, and it comes to the part where Mordecai saved the king's life. The king sits up and says, wait a minute. He saved my life. Have we done anything for him? Like, we should honor him some way. How should we honor him? And he's thinking, and he's thinking. He says, wait a minute. Is anybody out in the courtyard? Guess who's out there in the courtyard? Haman. He calls Haman in. And get this, boys and girls. He says, Haman, if I were going to honor somebody who I think is really awesome, what should I do? Well, who do you think Haman thinks he's talking about? Haman thinks he's talking about him. So he's like, oh yeah, you should let him wear your crown, let him ride your horse and your robe, and have someone lead him through the city yelling, woohoo, this guy's awesome. So he thinks it's going to happen to him. Guess what? The king says, that's a great idea. I want you to go out there and do it for Mordecai. Haman, oh my goodness. So he is so mad. And he has to go out, and he has to travel around. Look at his face. Oh my goodness, he's so mad. He has to go out, and he has to lead everyone through the city with Mordecai, who he hates, who he's trying to kill. Ugh, he's so mad. So he does that, and Mordecai's kind of embarrassed because he's a kind of a humble guy, but he takes them all through the city, and he's all mad, and he goes back, but then he gets to go to dinner again. So he's all excited, and he gets to go back to dinner with the king and Esther. So finally they have dinner, and then the king says, really, Esther, tell me, what do you want? And she says, I want you to save my family. And he says, what do you mean? Who's trying to hurt your family? And she's like, Haman. Haman wants to kill all of my family and Mordecai. Mordecai's my uncle. And the king looks at Haman and he's like, wait a minute. You want to kill, didn't I just honor Mordecai? And you want to kill my queen? Well, Haman is going to start freaking out pretty soon because he doesn't realize, he had no idea that Queen Esther was a Jew. And he's like, oh no. Well, the king gets so mad, he gets up and he has to take a minute. He has to walk outside. Have any of your moms and dads ever gotten like really irritated with you, like you're really disobeying, and they kind of have to just go take a minute to gather themselves, because they're really upset? That's how the king was. He's like, I'm going to have self-control, and I'm going to walk out the door for a minute, and I'm going to come back in a minute. And when he comes back, here's what he sees. You're going to love this, boys and girls. He comes back, and Haman is freaking out, and so he grabs Esther going, please, I didn't know it was you. And he's like not trying to hurt her, he's just begging. Well, it looks like he's trying to hurt her. So the king is like, that's it, you're out. And he takes all of Haman and his family and gets rid of them. I'm just going to say that. He gets rid of them. Moms and dads, you know what that means. But the kids, he gets rid of them. And then he makes a new law. And the new law gets sent out where this is kind of crazy, but the Jews can all fight back on that day. That same day where people were going to attack the Jews can fight back. So everyone's been saved. All of the whole, there's millions of them that came out of Egypt. So there's millions of all these Jewish people are going to get saved, all because of Queen Esther and her uncle. So here's what I want you to think about. Oh, and by the way, Queen Esther, she was saved queen, and then Mordecai got to take Haman's place, which is pretty cool. Now I want you to talk, this story, what we're talking about, this story, was God totally in control the whole time? Yeah, because he put Esther right there and put Mordecai right there. All these things just happened to happen, and the king just happened to not be able to sleep that night. That was the Lord. The Lord went through the whole thing, and he was totally in control. Now, if the Lord is in control of this, and this one girl, and this one uncle, and all those people, and think about that, all millions of people, he's in control for us too, isn't he? So do we have to worry or be scared about anything? Because if God can handle this, he absolutely could handle me, right? So if I'm ever scared of the dark at night, which you guys know that sometimes Miss Elizabeth is kind of scared of the dark. So if I'm scared of the dark, can I trust God to take care of me? Absolutely. God is in control of everything, everywhere, and he created all of us. So he loves us even more than our moms and dads do, which is a ton. So that is the story of Esther, boys and girls. I hope you're having a great day. If you have any questions, you can always email me, or your moms and dads can get on Facebook and put a note on Facebook for me, or call me, whatever you need. I can answer any questions you have. Have a great day. Bye.